Welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom, on this cold, shocking Thursday morning.
Morning, Dad. Yes, it is very cold in Melbourne, as it is around the whole country. I've noticed, even up in places like Brisbane recently, the daily lows have been in single figures, which people in Queensland aren't used to.
Somebody I met just come back from Broome, they said it was fantastic. 32 every day. They're all swimming up there.
Well,
anyway, the big story of the week's Mr. Rupert Murdoch, and I sat up last night till I don't know what hour of the day and watched the enlightened Murdoch and Son talking to the lunatics from the Parliament in Britain. I mean, I thought James did an outstanding job himself. He explained things very well. I think he went up in the ratings, in my view, for what he had to say, and the way he handled himself and how he answered the questions. Rupert looked decidedly very old, was taking his time to answer the questions. I mean, he wants to stay on as chairman and chief executive. He hasn't got too long to go, I don't think.
No. Look, Rupert Murdoch is 80 years old, and to be honest, most people by 80 are well and truly retired. The fact that he's still trying to run one of the world's largest media businesses is a testament to him. His delaying of answering questions, that was a tactic he always used at annual general meetings. Whenever there was a difficult question, he'd say, "Oh, I can't hear you, on to the next person." But look, I think change is afoot at News Corp. Now, personally, I think the company's independent directors have a very difficult choice to make. Do they move against their founder, Rupert Murdoch, and therefore against the Murdoch
Well, it's already come
family?
out that they're not. They've given him full support.
Well, they have, but what if they suggested, look, Rupert, you stay on as chairman, but as you do in Australia and in the UK, we separate the role of chief executive and chairman. In the US, it's common to combine the two.
Yep.
Here, it's less common. We think for corporate governance, it's better to have the roles as separate. What if they said we have a new chief executive and it's not going to be your son, James? That would be seen as a bit of a palace coup against Murdoch.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think look, I know one of the directors on the board, and he was the chap who ran British Airways. He's gone on
Rod Eddington.
And I was talking to him about being on the board of News Corp. This was several months ago. And he said, "Oh, it's just fantastic to sit there." He said, "I'm learning more from Rupert Murdoch than he's getting out of me as a director. His mind is just sharp as a tack."
Although, but curiously, therein lies a bit of a problem. Because if someone like Sir Rod Eddington says, "I'm sitting there and learning from the great man," I mean, that is not what directors are supposed to do. They're supposed to exercise a supervisory role.
Well, he does that as well.
Well,
I mean, all he's saying is he's learning a lot, and he thinks he's got a lot of time for Murdoch.
Well, from a general perspective, just leaving aside, I mean, I don't think anybody's really suggesting that either Murdoch or his son is personally responsible for phone hacking. No. But at what point, it used to be that, if cabinet ministers, if something bad happened in their department, they fell on their sword and resigned. I mean,
that's what happened with the two policemen retired in Britain.
Well, to what extent should Rupert take a bow here and accept responsibility if indeed there's a criminal prosecution?
Well, I don't think he should. I think that money makes him look stupid, I think. If he admits guilt or something, I don't think he should be doing that. He's got to stand up and fight. The worrying thing for the Murdochs is there is obviously an investigation going on in the US. Now, if they find anything there, he could be charged criminally. I mean, he won't be so pleased that he's a US citizen.
No, in fact, the Americans tend to come down very, very heavily on those sorts of things. For example, with the so-called white-collar crimes in America, business crimes, the chief executive and several of the senior people at Enron several years ago, I mean, they were chained up. They were led away from the court in chains. That's how seriously the US regards those sorts of issues.
That's right. And the other problem is for the British Prime Minister. He had a long session in the Parliament last night, came back from his African trade mission, and William Hill, which is one of the bookmakers in London, has him 4-1. Are the odds that he will still be Prime Minister in 2012.
4-1 against.
4-1 against. So you can get 4-1 if you think he'll still be there.
Yeah, well, I mean, David Cameron has employed several News Corp people, for example, most recently his Chief of Staff, and that will now be seen as an error of judgment. Having said that, I don't think his own party's going to dump him. He did win the last election well.
That's right.
But look, it's a very unsettled time, and I'll talk in a few minutes about what it means for the markets. But I've got to say, if something criminal results from the UK inquiry, and that translates into an American look at it, remember there's lots of politicians out there who would love a chance to get stuck into Rupert Murdoch.
Well, look at the stupid Prime Minister and that Bob Brown just bringing it back to Australia. Here they are now talking about an inquiry in Australia. You only have an inquiry if you've found a problem.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, let's say phone hacking occurred in Australia. Now, that is against the Telecommunications Act, and it's a criminal matter for the police to investigate. What is really happening here is that politicians to the left of centre, like Bob Brown, who's obviously well to the left, they're saying, oh, well, we don't like some of the reporting that papers like the Daily Telegraph, the Australian, the Herald Sun in Melbourne make about issues like climate change. And they want, almost like a regulatory body to tell newspapers what they can and can't say. And that just strikes at the very heart of what it means to be a democratic society.
Exactly. I mean, these left-wingers, this Bob Brown and these Greens, they're going to be found out eventually. And as for Gillard, when she's now saying we have to have an inquiry, what are you going to inquire about?
Yeah, I mean, look, something bad happened in the UK. The UK authorities are dealing with it. Are there any allegations of phone hacking here?
No.
Even if they are, that is something for the criminal authorities, for the police and the DPP to look at. You don't need a separate parliamentary inquiry. I think this could rapidly escalate into a witch hunt.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's going to try and make it, but I don't think they'll succeed here in Australia. Now, on a totally different note, I went to Yabby Jean's funeral yesterday. What a great event. He worked it all out himself before he died. One of the jokes of the day was that he showed the draft to Smith, who played with St Kilda, who spoke.
Ian Smith, yeah.
And he said, you've left one thing out, Addy. Yabby, you didn't nominate your death date. Which was quite funny, but it was a very good day, and it showed he was not only a great football coach, he was a great coach of men in life. And
well, he had many great quotes, and one of the ones they printed in the paper today was he was saying to a halfback flanker who had the unenviable task of playing on Collingwood great Peter Dacos. He said, son, you're a Holden and he's a Mercedes-Benz.
That's right. Dacos kicked 7 goals that day. Well, we'll leave it all there, Tom, because it's Thursday. We're going to go straight on to your market report.
Well, let's firstly talk about News Corp. Now, News Corp shares were down the past few days. They have recovered, but they've recovered precisely because people think that there is a very good chance that Murdoch will be asked to step down. So at the moment, you have to be a brave person to invest in News Corp. There are many good businesses there, but if the parliamentary inquiry is turned into a full-blown witch hunt, who knows what might happen.
Well, I thought the market recovered because people were impressed with Murdoch and his son.
No, I think it's more because they hope that that's the end of it, and I'm saying I don't think it is the end of it. But look, I mean, no one knows. That's the whole thing. It's very uncertain. The Australian markets are stronger today. Now, leaving aside News Corp, of course, we've got two massive debt issues in the world. We've got the European debt crisis. It's still mainly on Greece, but now people are worried about Italy and Portugal and Spain. German Chancellor Angela Merkel came out overnight. She and her French counterpart, Nicolas Sarkozy, might have a proposal to fix up Greece. Markets obviously think that's a good idea. And of course in America, President Obama reckons he might have a deal with a group of cross-party senators, some Republicans, some Democrats, to lift the US debt ceiling issue. Again, they did all this borrowing of money.
They've got to move pretty quickly because
they've got 10 days. 10 days. 10 days. In fact, they've got less than that. They have to fix it literally in the next 7 days. So
I'm certain it'll be fixed, Tom. I mean, no person in their right mind would not lift the ceiling. Otherwise, the credit rating in the United States, which is AAA,
disappears.
Yeah,
goes down. Very quickly, gold, unsurprisingly, is hitting record highs. One of the solutions to too much debt is to print money, and that would debase the US dollar even further. Gold is currently $1,600 an ounce. That's a record high ever in human history. Unsurprisingly, shares in Newcrest also hitting record highs, almost $41 a share. And finally, Westpac Bank, their chief economist Bill Evans has come out and said that next year the Reserve Bank of Australia might be forced to cut interest rates as much as 100 basis points. That's 1%. They obviously think the economy, the local economy, is getting weaker. Clearly the mining and resources part is still very strong, but I tell you what, Dad, if you go to a housing auction at the moment in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane, it's very, very weak. People are not sticking their hands up. Maybe an interest rate cut is what we need.
I think we will need one, but the indications from the Reserve Bank when they put out their board minutes, didn't suggest that there was any thought of it.
No, look, we've got to wrap up. I can tell you, the Reserve Bank is yet to grasp just how much the Australian economy is slowing, but the commercial banks, in this case Westpac, they're seeing it through their customers. I reckon a rate cut's a good idea.
So do I. You got nothing else?
No, that's it.
Thanks. See you all next week.